Welcome again to this new PRAESENSA webinar. Presenters for today, that's myself, Peter Ophey, Application Engineer in Eindhoven. And also standby is Anton Thiele, also an Application Engineer here in Eindhoven. Today's objective for this webinar, basic system configuration. Yeah, we'll do a lot of things. Uploading messages, creating zones, creating call definition. You see the whole list that is necessary to get a working system. Yeah, and last week, or actually 2 weeks ago, we had a webinar on the first access to a PRAESENSA system, where you have to define your username, password, and also the security passphrase. So from where we left off then, we will continue now. Yeah, so the system has a username and password, it has a passphrase, and also it has already the components. You will see that in a moment during the demo. So in the end, we will have a working system. So basic system configuration. Yeah, you know that a lot of people are working from home. We are doing almost the same. Yeah, I am in the office, but I am working with an online connection to my demo system here. And the demo system you see on the right side of the screen, it's a small system. It is an MPS, one amplifier, and the picture is not completely right because you see one controller, and actually we now have 2 controllers. And on top you see a HP switch and a call station. The smaller picture, you see the wiring of this system. Yeah, so we have 2 controllers. You will see that also later on in the configuration. We have the MPS, the amplifier, and the call station. The diagram, you see the controller, you see the amplifier, MPS, and the call station there with one extension. There is on channel 4 an end-of-line board connected, and we have connected a loudspeaker on output number 1. Yeah, check the wiring. You see here the network, that's the blue part, the blue cable, the blue wire to the call station. The brown cable is the lifeline and power for the amplifier. And you see the orange lines, that is the power for the system controller. System has firmware 1.20 on it. It is already, as mentioned, partially configured. So the system composition is done. That's something we did in the last webinar. The account is set. Admin password is admin123. And also the Omnio security is set. Username is PRAESENSA PSK. And the passphrase is admin123. Now, before you start your configuration, you have to prepare things. Of course, you need a good overview of the system that you want to configure. You have the number of amplifiers, the number of MPS, call station extensions, the control inputs that you would like to use, control outputs that you want to use. So you have to know what you are going to do. Yeah. Also, you have to know what kind of functions that you want to configure. Whether you have normal call stations, emergency call stations, what priorities that you are going to use, what are the destinations for the calls, the zones, all those things you have to be aware of. And make sure that when you start your configuration, all devices are connected to the network, especially in the first part. That is very important, where you do your username, password, and passphrase. When I start a configuration, I most of the time start with pre-recorded messages. Yeah, you have to upload them to the controller. And you need those messages to be able to create call definitions, to create calls. So you can have normal calls, emergency calls, commercial, scheduled calls, time signals. And one thing is important, that every chime, every alarm tone, every message that you want to use in the system, you have to upload. Yeah, there are no default chimes in the system controller, you all have to upload them as WAV files. Of course, you can also have calls without a chime or an alarm signal. That's also possible. That's just a part of the call definition. You have to create zones. Important. Yeah. An audio can only be used when you assign it to a zone. You cannot use an audio output if it is not in a zone. So amplifier outputs have to be in zones. If you have analog outputs, Dante outputs to analog, let's say line signal, you have to use those outputs in zones. That's the only way that you can get a signal out of PRAESENSA. Yeah. What is important, that is that an audio output can only be used once in a zone. You cannot use audio outputs in multiple zones. You can have one zone for one output. Yeah, and later on you can combine those zones. That's no problem. You can have more audio outputs in one single zone, but always an audio output that is used cannot be used in another zone. Call definitions. Yeah, you need a call definition when you start a call. Call definition is one of the most important parts in PRAESENSA, and you will see when you do a configuration, you will have a lot of call definitions. Keep in mind, if you have a lot of call stations which have the same function, let's say in an airport where you have a lot of gates, the call definitions can be used in a lot of call stations. You don't have to create a call definition for each individual call station. Yeah. If you have created call definitions and something has to change in a call definition, it is better to create a new call definition instead of modifying an existing call definition, because you never know where a call definition is used somewhere else in the system. If you change that call definition, it will also change in other locations. So when something has to change, it is better to create a new call definition. So what do you need for a call? Well, first of all, the source. A call station could be the source, the microphone on a call station. What you also need is a control input. Control input plus an audio input most of the time. Control input can be a contact input, but basically it's also the press to talk, the push to talk on a call station is also a control input. You need destinations. Where should the call go to? Amplifier outputs, they're always in zones. Dante outputs or analog outputs, always used in a zone. You need, of course, the call definition, where you define the priority, the start tone, messages, live speech, end tone, audio input. All those properties are set in the call definition. If you want to create BGM channels, background music, you need a source. A source for background music can be a call station. Yeah, the call station input. There is a 3.5mm mini jack where you can connect a music source. Another source for background music can be a Dante or AES67 input. So let's start with the demo. Yeah, this is the system that we have connected now. You've seen it already. An end-of-line board connected to the amplifier number 4. It says an 8-channel amplifier. That's wrong because it's a 4-channel amplifier. Doesn't matter. We have a loudspeaker connected. We have the controller, MPS, the power supply, and the call station. Yeah, and from here we will start with our configuration. And this is the opening screen when you access the system. Yeah, what you see here in the screen is that we have installed firmware version 1.20. That is the latest firmware that we have. This is the opening screen. You can select your language. I use English and I go to continue. And I have to log in now. Yeah, you see, this is my controller and I log in. So this is the username and password. And you see, I'm in the configuration page. I mentioned when I start a configuration, you go to configure. You see a whole list of items that you have to go through. And what I normally do is I go to first to system options. Yeah, and I upload my messages. Yeah, so the list is empty. So I have to find my messages. They are somewhere on my seven messages. So I will upload them one by one. There's the first one. I'll just double click on the message. And there it is. Attention, please. Oh, I can take this one. Okay. It's a bit slow. The evac message we use. Let's try it this way. This doesn't look good. I'm working here with a wireless connection and okay, I will log in again. Let's see if that helps. Okay, here I am again. System options, see what is left. Right, what I did. We have 3 of them. I'll just add a new one. I think we have the most important ones already. There it is. Okay, this is enough for now. So submit. You see, I have a one-tone chime, an attention signal, I have a closing signal, a parking message, and a thank you. I would like to have one more. That's the evac message. That's this one. There it is. Evac. Submit. And now these messages are in the configuration. And now I can start with my actual configuration. Yep. You see, this is my system composition. This is what we did last time in the previous webinar where we talked about first access to the system. Yeah, you see a bit different from the picture that you saw. We have 2 controllers. So we have a redundant controller in the system. We have an amplifier, MPS3, and a call station D. It's a desktop call station. You see the host names, the device names, and you see BCN. This is the system connected to the Bosch corporate network. So the next step, we go to device options. And we start at the system controller. Here it is, the system controller. Yep. And let's have a look at the general part. I have supervision on the both power inputs. So this is okay. Redundant network controller, network redundancy, this is also okay. There's nothing we have to change here. These are default settings. We go to we are going to use the other inputs perhaps later, I'm not sure. Let's go to the amplifier. Here we have the 4-channel amplifier, and here we can use the default settings. This is default power supply supervision, ground leakage, the ground short supervision, and the lifeline is all supervised. But we go to the audio outputs. So these are the amplifier outputs, the 100-volt outputs of the amplifier. Now, I mentioned already that I have an end-of-line board connected to output number 4. I have not connected an end-of-line board to 3, 2, and 1. So I have to take that loudspeaker line supervision out. I have connected speaker to output here, output A. Amplifier channel supervision, overload supervision is there, so that's all the same for all the channels. This is all you have to do here. Yeah, so this is also done now. Submit, and that's it. We go to the MPS, the multifunction power supply. Yeah, in the general part, well, we have a mains. We don't have a battery, so we can leave this off. But the amplifier, if you remember the drawing, the block diagram, you know that the amplifier is connected to output number 1. Yeah, so I have to switch the output number 1 on, then I will have the 48 volt. Yeah, so this is for now all we have to do in the MPS. Later on, we will do the control inputs and the control outputs. We go to the call station. Now let's submit, and we go to the call station. Yeah, call station, here it is. In the general part, we keep it as a normal call station. We also have the emergency call station there, but we keep it as a normal call station. There is one extension connected, so we have to select one, and there is only one Cat5 cable connected, so we have to select one PoE. So this is the general part. Then we go to functions. Functions are the tiles that you see in the display. So what you can do on this page is that you can enable or disable tiles on the display of a call station. I can imagine that not all call stations need the information tile or the fault log tile or the alert messages. It depends on the function or the location of the call station. For now, we just keep everything enabled, so all functions will be active on the call station. The audio inputs. A call station has 2 audio inputs. First one is the microphone. Yeah. The second one is the line level input. That's the 3.5 millimeter mini jack on the side of the call station. We use that later. So now it's only the call station, and I have switched off the supervision because I have a small problem in the call station. Why I leave it switched off. So these are the settings for the audio input. I click submit. And what I see now is that I have one extension. Now, in the extension, let me see. Yeah, I see that default, or you see that default, all functions are zone selection functions. Well, for the first 4 buttons, that's no problem because I want to use them for zone selection. But button number 11 and 12, I want to use for acknowledge and reset. So I select here, acknowledge reset, and also acknowledge reset. Later, I will define whether it is acknowledge or reset, and whether I use it for emergencies or fault. Now I just give it a function. Yeah, submit. Recorded messages, alert messages, we leave as they are. We're not going to use them. So these are the settings for the call station. System client, that for the open interface, we're not going to use that. I go to System Options. And this is what we've done already. Here are my pre-recorded messages. I've uploaded them to the controller so we can use them now in the configuration. For the rest, the settings here are default. Yeah. Spanning tree is always switched on. Multicast address range. Yeah, this is a default range. Allow access by non-configured system clients. It's ticked, so everybody can go to the open interface. Call station timeout language for the call station. Then we have the amplifier output where you can select 70 or 100 volt. What you see here is a new function UL amplifier mode. We don't have to use that here. Emergency mode. What happens when the system is in emergency mode? What calls will be stopped? Which calls below a certain priority? The same for the backup power mode. What calls will be stopped when the system is in the backup power mode? Then we have a fault mode, and we have here, and this is a bit different from when you have a system with only one controller. Here we have system controller redundancy. So these are the settings for a redundant system controller. Yeah, you see that they now have a group name, and they also have here a group IP. Yeah, so this is the only thing that is different from a normal call station with one controller. Yeah, we didn't change anything here, so we can go to the next topic, time settings. If you have a time server on your network, you can set that here. Network supervision item here. That is where you can supervise the network. You can make a snapshot of the network, and the moment something in the wiring of the network changes, you will get a fault in the system. It will tell you that something has changed in the network wiring. We're not going to do that for today. The next step, we go to zone definition. And in zone definition, we have to define the zones. You see there is always one zone active already. It's predefined. That is the lifeline. And in this case, we have 1 MPS. The lifeline is always going to output number 1 on the MPS. But we have to create zones. And we will use, let's say, 4 zones. So I click on Add, and I'll just type in Zone 1. And you know that this is the zone, and here are the amplifier outputs. So I can add an amplifier output to this zone. Yeah, and now if I click Submit, this is Zone 1. Yeah, I can create new zones. Zone number 2. Click on Add, and I can assign the amplifier output number 2. I'll just quickly add 4 zones like this. And zone number 4. And I will use output number 4, amplifier output number 4. Yep. You can also create zones for Dante outputs, and then you have to use these outputs. Yeah. Now, I mentioned that already. You know that now all 4 amplifier outputs are used in a different zone. Zone 4 has amplifier output number 4. Don't assign these 3 outputs to this zone because they are already assigned to another zone. Yeah, don't do that. In the end, there is a check on this, and you will see if there are some errors in the configuration. For now, we have 4 zones, and that is enough. We can make a zone group. Yeah, let's say all zones. Yeah, and we can just assign all the 4 zones to this zone group. Yeah, so now we have a zone group, and if you select that, the call will automatically go to all 4 zones. BGM routing we can skip now, we do that later. But we go to call definition. There are no call definitions, so I will create a few. The first one is the call definition for a normal call, and I'll just call it the one-tone chime call definition. There it is. So what I'm going to use here, the priority is 100. Yeah. This is all part of the preparations what you do in advance. Yeah. You know what priority this call should have. And I'm going to use a one-tone chime. Here's my one-tone chime. I just double click and it will jump into the window. I will go to live speech. I select yes because I want to use the microphone. Not using an end tone. Continue call, not necessary. And an audio input, I select the default audio input. The default audio input is always the microphone on a call station. If you're using another input for a call, then it is never the default input. Yeah, and you see that we have a lot of inputs here that you can select out. Yep, but for now, it is the default input. This is my first call definition. I'll make another one, and that is a closing message. Yeah, just call it close. There it is. The priority can stay at 32. It's not such an important message. I will give it also a one-tone chime. I can select that here. Yeah, that is my start chime. And the message will just be, your attention, please. The shop is going to close in a few minutes. Thank you. You can set repetitions. You do that over where if you want, let's say you play it twice, one more. Yeah, that's how to read it. Yeah. The repetitions have effect on the messages, not on the start tone. But in this case, if you start this or you use this call definition, you will have a one-tone chime. Your attention, shop is going to close in a few minutes. Thank you. No live speech. Create another one, and that's an emergency. Yeah. And here the priority will be to 30. So that's an emergency priority. And there will only be the text, your attention, please. Evacuate the building. Thank you. Yeah. But now we want to have this message playing all the time. So we set repetitions to infinite. Yeah. No live speech. For the rest, everything is default. Yeah. So submit. And you now see already that we have call definitions. So, last part. And that is the actual definition of the call that we want to make. And we do that. We don't have to go to the controller and the MPS, the power supply. We go to the call station immediately. Here's my call station for the call station. Yep. So, momentary or toggle. Yeah, there is a microphone, a live microphone in the call. So I would say go to momentary. With toggle, you can forget to switch it off. The call definition, this is the normal call. One-tone chime, priority 100. So this part is okay now. I go to my extension. Yeah. I have the function zone selection, but there are no zones here. So I have to select the zones. This is zone 1, this button. This is the button for zone 2. This is the button for zone 3. And this is the button for zone 4. So now I have 4 buttons for zone selection. And I can make a call to one of those 4 zones. What I also can do is, of course, I can go to zone group. And I see here my all zones. So button number 5 is a call to all zones at the same time. Then I go to my button number 11 and 12, where I have defined acknowledge reset function. Well, the first one I want to use for fault, and in this case, I want to use it for acknowledge and reset, both. And the second button is for emergency and also acknowledge and reset. Yeah, I can click submit, and now the configuration is there. Yep, you see, I have 4 zone buttons. I have 1 zone group button now, and I have acknowledge reset for faults and emergencies. Yeah, there's one thing I would like to do before I save and restart, and that is the audio settings in the amplifier. I will reduce them a little bit because they will be very loud. I've connected to, yeah, so I will reduce the volume there. I'll set it to -10, apply, and that's it. And now save and restart my configuration. After that, the call should start. So the save and restart will take about 15 seconds or so. Let's wait for a moment. And there it is again. Yeah. I have to log in again because the system has been switched off and it's switched on. So I log in again. Yeah. But what I can do now is I can go to the zone, and you can hear it. The chime is starting. It is a 1-tone chime, and the microphone is active. And the level is not so very high because I reduced the volume. Yeah, and after the call station is back to the idle state. So this is how you create your first call. Yeah. So let's go to background music, BGM. What do you have to do for that? Well, we want to connect our BGM source to the call station. So we have to go into the configuration, and we go to device options, to the call station. There it is. And we go to the audio inputs. And I want to use my line level input, my mini jack, on the call station. So I have to enable this input. Yeah, so I click submit. So input is enabled. I go to my zone definition and I create BGM channels. There is no BGM channel defined now at this moment, so I'll just music. There it is. This is the channel, and there are no inputs selected. I have to select an input for this BGM channel. Now, long list of audio inputs, and the call station is at the end of the list. This is my call station input number 2. Yeah, and this is actually all I have to do. I have a music channel, I have an input. I don't have to assign zones here. I can do that. It's not necessary because I can do the selection, the zone selection for the BGM on the call station. So this is all I have to do. I go to submit, and that's it. But what I have to do is something else. I have to go to my to the action definition, and I have to go again to the call station, to the keypad, to the extension, and I have to enable background music for the zones. Yeah, so I have to tick this box and then assign music to these channels. So you see what I can do here. I can assign background music to a zone, but if I don't assign music to zone 3 and 4, they will not have background music. They don't have the option music for those zones. So we assign background music for zone 1 and 2 only. Yeah. Okay. Submit. Save the configuration. Restart the system. And let's see if the music is playing. Just a moment. First log in again. This is not necessary, but I'll just do it anyway. So I select music on the call station. I select the zone. And I think you can hear it. The music is playing on the call station. You can hear it via my microphone. And on the call station, I can also reduce the volume. Yeah, I can mute it, can enable it again, and I can stop the music on zone 1. Yeah. So this part was about background music. Next, we are going to use a control input, and the control inputs are on the MPS. So we go to device options and we go to the MPS. Here it is. And we go to the control input. Yeah. So default, all control inputs are set to make announcement, start a call. Yeah. So we're going to use the first one. Yeah. Make announcement. One action. Well, the switch that I connected has 2 resistors on it. So the supervision should be on for this input. Yeah. So this is enough for contact number 1. Yeah. Then I go to action definition. I go again to the multifunction power supply, MPS3, to the control input number 1. Yeah. And now I can select toggle if I want. And what I also will select is the emergency. Yeah. So now what I do here, start with this contact input, emergency. There are no zones, so I will just select zone 1 and 2. The speaker is connected to zone 1. So when I when I close the contact now, the emergency will start in zone 1 and 2. So I submit, save and restart. System will restart. And then let's see if the emergency will start. So what we hear now in a moment is the message that you have to evacuate the building.
Your attention, please. Due to an emergency, it is necessary to evacuate the terminal building. Thank you. Your attention, please. Due to an emergency, it is necessary to evacuate.
And you hear that the message is running all the time. The message is running all the time because in the call definition, we set it to repetitions infinite. Yeah, the system was also in emergency mode. You can't see that, but it was. And that is because we used priority 230. and that's an emergency priority. So the system goes into the emergency mode, and you have to get the system out of the emergency mode again with emergency acknowledge and reset. Yeah. One more. We are going to use the control outputs, the relay contact. I have to log in again. Oh, okay. Try again. There I am. So for that, I go to the MPS again in device options. Yeah, and I go to my control outputs. Yeah, and you see all control outputs are enabled, but they are all set to switch output. That's the default setting, and we want to use the function zone activity, and we just used it for the first 4 contacts. So I've selected now zone activity. That means the relay will be activated when a call or background music in a certain zone, but we have to assign it to a zone. Next step is action definition. Again, we go to the MPS and we go to the control outputs. And here you see the 4 outputs that I have, that I gave the function zone activity. And what you now see is the priority range. Yeah, and it says 32 to 255. For those who have done the online training or perhaps even the classroom training already or have worked with PRAESENSA, you know that the range 32 to 255, that are calls. Below 32, you have background music. Yeah. So this means now that if I assign this contact to zone 1, if there is a call in zone 1 with a priority between 32 and 255, the relay will be activated. Yeah, so every call that goes to zone 1, the relay will be activated. And here, this one I will assign to zone 2, but this one we go to 32. I can here go to 223. And why 223? This is now the range for the normal calls. So emergency calls will not activate this relay. This is zone 3. This could be zone 4. Yeah, click submit. And you see that this is now the setting. These are the settings for those 4 contacts. Save configuration and restart. And now we have a problem, of course, because you cannot see that the relays are activated. So you have to trust me and believe me when I say they are. We have a reset of the system now. It'll take a few seconds, but not that long. Yeah, there it is. I will make a call to zone 3. Yeah, or zone 1, but problem here is you don't hear or you don't see the relay. 1, 2, 3. But at this moment, perhaps you can hear it, the relay is activated. So this is how you assign contacts, for instance, to a zone. Of course, we have many more functions that you can use for the contact. So we had a restart. I have to log in again. We go to the last part. The last part of this webinar, and that is how to create a backup of your configuration. Yeah, Again, you have to log in. You have to log in and as an administrator. That's important. Yeah, and here you see the function backup and restore. And that's actually quite simple. You go to backup and restore and you select backup. Yeah, and here you can make a backup for the configuration and the user credentials. And you can also protect it with a password. And I'll just use my password, my default password, and I say create. Yeah, and I can save the file. Yeah, and you see it here on my screen. If I open this box, one moment. You see that it is in the download, and this is the file. System controller, backup. Yeah, you see it's a zip file. .tar.gz. This is the backup now. Yeah. And if you have a backup, you can also upload it. You can also restore it. And for that, you go to restore. Yeah. And there is no backup file selected. So you have to find it now. And you know it is in the download page. Here are my downloads. And here is the file. You see, so now I can open it and I have to type in my password. I can also restore it. I can upload it to the system, to the controller, and it will restart. And then the configuration is there. I'm not going to do that because the restart will take longer than before. When you upload a new configuration in the system, especially when you have two controllers, the restart will take about 2 or 3 minutes, and that's a bit too long. At least for now. So a quick recap of all the topics. Make sure that you have a good overview of what you're going to do. Yeah, the functions that you want to use, what calls you want to make. Yeah, make sure that you have all this information in advance. Yeah, and then you can start your configuration. So we talked about all these subjects, and you should be able to make a configuration now. Yeah, demo we did, questions and answers we did. Now, upcoming new webinars. We have a conference webinar on November 19th. Connecting a PRAESENSA webinar connecting to external Dante devices on November 25th. And on December 9th, we have also a PRAESENSA webinar about network setup, linked local DHCP, DNS, all those things. That's it for now. Thank you for attending this webinar and staying with us for 1 hour and 10 minutes. This is it from our side. Thank you again. Stay healthy, stay safe, and hopefully see you in the next webinar.